Welcome back to English Unfiltered, the podcast where we explore real conversations in English. I'm Alex.
And I'm Jamie. And today we're diving into
that incredibly frustrating moment when you know English perfectly well in your head, but the second you try to speak, your brain just stops working.
Oh, it is just the absolute worst feeling. And it's so common, too.
I mean, we hear about this all the time for people. It's this super specific, just agonizing scenario.
Right.
Like, picture this. You're sitting on your couch on a Tuesday night. You're watching a movie in English or, listening to a podcast.
Maybe this podcast.
Exactly. And you're catching all the jokes. You're following these really complex arguments. You understand like 95, maybe even 100% of what's being said.
Your passive understanding is just firing on all cylinders.
Right. Which obviously builds up your confidence. You sit there thinking, hey, I'm pretty good at this. I've got this.
You feel incredibly capable when you're just in the safety of your own living room.
But then you step out into the real world.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Yeah. You go to a networking event or you're traveling and a barista asks you some surprisingly complicated question about your coffee order.
Like, do you want room for cream or oat milk or...
Right. And boom. Panic completely sets in. Suddenly, all those words you just understood an hour ago, they're totally inaccessible.
Gone.
Just forming a basic 5-word sentence feels like, it feels like you're trying to mentally calculate the distance to Jupiter. You just completely draw a blank.
And, the immediate conclusion everyone jumps to when they draw a blank is just so punishing.
It really is.
We instantly think, oh, my English is terrible. I'm a fraud. I need to go back and, memorize more vocabulary.
That is the universal default reaction, isn't it?
Yeah.
We always blame our technical knowledge.
Exactly. We assume the database is just empty.
But the core insight we really need to get into today is that this isn't actually an English problem at all.
Not even a little bit. Because think about it, if you can understand the language passively, the knowledge is clearly in there.
Right, it didn't just evaporate.
No, what you're actually experiencing is this profound emotional and physiological reaction.
Which is fascinating to me because in the moment, it really feels like an intellectual failure. Like you're just not smart enough. But you're saying it's essentially like a biological response.
Precisely. When you experience that total brain freeze, your language skills haven't gone anywhere. Your brain has just temporarily locked you out of them.
Locked you out. I love that phrasing.
It all comes down to how our brains process social dynamics. Because when we speak our native language, the process is, it's largely automatic, right?
Yeah, you don't really think about it.
Exactly. We aren't consciously directing every single syllable. The words and the thoughts and the emotions, they're all synchronized.
But speaking a second language.
Especially when you're still mastering it. Yeah. It triggers this massive wave of hyper self-awareness.
Oh, totally. It changes the entire physical dynamic of how you operate.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it like walking on the ground versus walking on a tightrope.
Okay. I like this.
So when you walk down the sidewalk in your native language, you never look at your feet. You just walk. You're looking around, talking to your friend.
Right.
But speaking a new language is like someone suddenly suspended you 50 feet in the air on a tightrope.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a much better way to visualize it.
Right. You're up on this tightrope, and let's say the wind is blowing, which is basically your insecurity about your accent.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a crowd watching you, which is the social pressure of the conversation itself. Mm-hmm. And you're holding this massive, heavy balancing pole.
Which would be all the grammar rules you're desperately trying to remember.
Exactly. So you're up there balancing all this. And if the person you're talking to suddenly throws a ball at you, like they ask an unexpected question.
You can't catch it.
You literally can't catch it without dropping the balancing pole and falling off the rope. Yeah. You're simply managing way too many variables at once.
And being on that tightrope, it pushes you into what psychologists call a performance trap.
A performance trap.
Yeah. Your brain basically stops viewing the conversation as a normal collaborative social interaction.
Like just a simple, low-stakes exchange between two humans.
Right. Instead, it treats the interaction like a high-stakes stage performance. And the moment your brain perceives that you are, quote-unquote, performing, it begins actively scanning the environment for threats.
Oh, man. That internal monologue of danger just kicks right in.
It's exhausting.
It's that voice constantly whispering, what if I use the wrong tense? What if they judge my accent? Or what if I look completely incompetent?
And that last one is the real kicker, isn't it? The fear of looking incompetent.
Because language is just so deeply tied to our fundamental identity.
That is the core of the emotional crisis right there. Language is, it's the primary vehicle we use to project our personality to the world.
Our intelligence, our sense of humor.
Exactly. In your native language, you might be this brilliant engineer or a really nuanced thinker or just the funniest person in the room. You have total command over how people perceive you.
But then you switch to English. And if you're still learning, you suddenly can't express the full complexity of who you are.
Your vocabulary is limited, so
you feel like your personality is suddenly limited too, like you're reduced to a 5-year-old.
which is just an incredibly vulnerable place to be for a competent adult.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You have these highly intelligent, capable people who suddenly feel totally emotionally exposed. They feel reduced. And not because they actually became less intelligent, right?
Their IQ didn't drop.
But because they lost access to their primary tool for proving their intelligence to others.
So the brain perceives that loss of status as like a literal threat to your survival. It thinks, oh no, the tribe is going to reject me because I found foolish.
Yes, exactly. And when the brain perceives a threat, whether it's a physical predator in the wild or just social embarrassment at a cafe, the amygdala, which is the brain's alarm system, it basically hijacks your cognitive processing.
It just takes over entirely.
It floods your system with cortisol, the stress hormone. And here is the actual mechanical reason why you draw a blank. Cortisol physically inhibits the pathways to your prefrontal cortex.
Wow. And the prefrontal cortex is where we do all our complex thinking, right?
And our memory retrieval.
So you are literally chemically locked out of the filing cabinet where you keep your English vocabulary.
You are.
And no amount of willpower can force that door open when the alarm is blaring.
Which is why trying harder in that exact moment usually just makes it so much worse.
Wait, hold on. Let me challenge that for a second. Because if I feel myself struggling in a conversation, my natural instinct is to slow down, intensely monitor my grammar, and carefully build the perfect sentence in my head before I even open my mouth.
Right.
Are you saying I shouldn't do that? Because, isn't the whole point of learning all these rules so that we can use them to avoid sounding incomprehensible?
It seems completely logical that hyper-focusing would fix the problem.
It really does.
But trying to construct perfect sentences while you are stressed out fundamentally misunderstands how our cognitive systems work.
Okay, how so?
It comes down to something called working memory. Working memory is essentially your brain's short-term workspace. It's where you actively hold and manipulate information in real time.
And working memory has a very strict capacity limit, doesn't it?
A severely limited capacity. Think of your working memory like an air traffic controller.
Okay.
On a normal day, managing 5 airplanes, which represent, say, your basic conversation skills, is completely fine. Easy.
Just a sunny day at the airport.
Right. But when you start aggressively monitoring your speech, trying to be perfect, you're suddenly asking that same air traffic controller to manage 50 airplanes.
Oh, wow.
In the middle of a hurricane.
Right, because you're trying to recall the vocabulary, you're trying to conjugate the verb perfectly, you're focusing on your pronunciation.
You're translating from your native language in your head.
Yeah. And you're trying to read the other person's facial expressions to see if they understand you while desperately suppressing the panic that you're looking stupid.
Exactly.
There's way too many planes.
It's an impossible cognitive load, like having way too many tabs open on your web browser. When you demand that your conscious brain manage all of those microscopic mechanics simultaneously, your working memory just overloads.
And the system crashes.
The system completely crashes. That crash is the blank mind. Fluency collapses entirely.
So you start hesitating, your speech rhythm is totally ruined, and your processing speed drops to basically 0.
Yep. So the very act of trying to force perfection is what guarantees failure.
Man, it's a brutal paradox. And I guess this explains that classic frustration we hear literally all the time. People always say, I can think so clearly and speak perfectly when I'm practicing alone in my bedroom, but I completely fall apart in real conversation.
The environmental context is just everything. Because when you are alone in your room, there's absolute 0 social pressure.
No one is judging you.
Right. The amygdala isn't detecting any threats at all. Your air traffic controller only has to manage the language itself, not the fear of judgment.
So the words just flow effortlessly.
Exactly.
But what's really insidious about this whole dynamic to me is that the panic doesn't even wait for the conversation to begin.
Oh, no. Definitely not.
It's not like you start speaking and then get stressed. Usually this whole physiological response starts way before you even open your mouth. It's all about anticipation.
Because the human brain is fundamentally a prediction machine.
Right.
It uses your past experiences to guess what is going to happen next. If you have a history of frustrating or embarrassing experiences speaking English,
Which most learners do.
exactly, your brain remembers that pain. So the moment you realize you have to speak English, your brain anticipates the embarrassment before it even happens.
It's just projecting past failures onto a future event. Your brain looks at the upcoming conversation and goes, alert, we are about to look foolish again. Brace for impact.
And that brace for impact command, it sends your nervous system straight into protection mode.
Which comes with very real, tangible, physical symptoms that you can feel in your body. I mean, we've all been there. You can feel your heartbeat speed up, just thumping in your chest.
Your hands get sweaty.
Yeah. Your muscles tense up, particularly like in your jaw, your neck, and your shoulders. And your breathing totally changes.
You start taking these shallow, rapid breaths from your chest instead of deep breaths from your diaphragm.
Which creates this really vicious physiological cycle, right?
Yeah.
Because shallow breathing means less oxygen is getting to your brain.
Right. And less oxygen means your prefrontal cortex operates even less efficiently, which only compounds the mental confusion.
Making the brain freeze even worse.
You are physically suffocating your own cognitive abilities.
And here is the great irony of this entire protection mode. By feeling all this pressure and by trying so desperately to control the interaction so you don't look unnatural.
You actually guarantee that your English will sound robotic and unnatural.
Exactly. Fear is just the ultimate enemy of spontaneity.
And spontaneity is the single most essential ingredient for a natural, flowing conversation. Think about how native speakers actually communicate. They aren't consciously constructing their sentences step by step like a math equation before they let the words out.
No. Absolutely not. We just have an impulse, we start making noises, and we just trust that the grammar will sort itself out by the time we hit the end of the sentence.
That trust is key. Native speakers react emotionally to what is being said first. They feel an urge to agree or disagree or laugh, and the language simply trails along behind that emotional impulse.
The connection leads, and the mechanics follow.
But an anxious learner reverses that entirely. Because they feel unsafe, they prioritize control over the connection. They put the mechanics first.
They try to build the perfect grammatical vehicle before they allow themselves to express the emotion.
And that's why the interaction feels so rigid. It's all calculation. It leaves no room for the natural rhythm, the pauses, the messy humanity of a real conversation.
Okay, so if overthinking is the disease and hypercontrol is just making the symptoms worse, how do we actually fix this? What is the practical way out of this trap?
Well, the solution requires a fundamental paradigm shift in how you view fluency itself. In traditional language learning, we're taught to view fluency purely as an accumulation of technical knowledge.
Like, if I learn 500 more words and master the present perfect continuous tense, then I will be fluent.
Exactly. But technical knowledge is completely useless if your brain locks you out of the database.
Right.
Real-world fluency is just as much about emotional regulation as it is about vocabulary.
Emotional regulation.
Yes, it's the ability to manage that internal panic, to calm the amygdala down, and to keep the pathways to your prefrontal cortex open. You speak better when you feel safe enough to be imperfect.
Safe enough to be imperfect.
Yep.
That is such a profound way to frame it, and honestly, it proves out in real life.
Oh, absolutely.
I hear this constantly from language learners. They'll tell me they struggle immensely during a high-stakes meeting at work, right? They can barely string a sentence together.
Sure.
But then later that evening, when they're having a beer with a close, supportive friend, they are suddenly speaking incredibly fluent English.
And we know they didn't magically memorize a new dictionary between the office and the bar.
Right. The technical knowledge remained exactly the same.
The only thing that changed was the emotional environment.
Well, the beer probably helped relax the nervous system a bit, sure.
Definitely helps.
But more importantly, the social threat was removed. When you're with a good friend, the danger of judgment just disappears. You're no longer performing on a stage. You're just connecting.
And because you feel safe, your air traffic controller isn't wasting energy managing the fear of looking stupid, the cognitive load drops, the cortisol clears out, and all those words you already know can finally flow to the surface.
So it really all comes back to the core purpose of language itself. Communication is fundamentally about human connection. It is not an exam.
Not at all.
It is not about perfect performance. The person listening to you honestly does not care if you use the wrong preposition or if you stumble over some complex verb conjugation, as long as they understand your story or your joke or just the point you were trying to make.
Shifting your goal from perfect English to successful connection changes absolutely everything. And honestly, this exposes perhaps the biggest misconception learners carry around with them.
What's that?
So many people operate under the belief that once I become completely fluent and stop making mistakes, then I will finally feel confident.
Oh yeah, they treat confidence as like the ultimate reward at the end of the journey.
But the psychology shows us it is entirely the reverse. Confidence does not magically appear after you reach some mythical state of flawless fluency. Confidence, or I guess to put it more accurately, the willingness to let go of control and be comfortable making mistakes is the very thing that allows fluency to appear in the first place.
Wow, so you don't wait for confidence to arrive. You use confidence as the key to unlock the language you already have stored inside you.
Yes. If you refuse to tolerate your own mistakes, you will just keep your working memory overloaded with anxiety forever.
You literally have to give yourself permission to sound a little messy.
It is the only way to build that spontaneous rhythm that makes a language sound natural.
Let's quickly recap what we've unpacked today, because this is a massive shift in perspective for a lot of people.
It really is.
If you freeze up when trying to speak English, your English isn't broken. Your brain is just throwing a protective firewall up because it perceives social danger. You don't necessarily need more flashcards. You need a reset on your emotional regulation.
Stop treating every conversation like a high-wire performance you have to perfectly execute.
Exactly. Start treating it as a simple, messy opportunity to connect with another human being. Get off the tightrope and just stand on the ground.
I love that imagery. And I'd like to leave everyone listening with something highly practical to try.
Yeah, please do.
The next time you find yourself about to speak English and you feel that familiar wave of panic starting to rise in your chest, before you even try to search for words, take a moment to notice your physical body.
Like do a quick internal scan.
Yes, notice your posture. Are your shoulders creeping up to your ears? Are you clenching your jaw?
Are you holding your breath?
Exactly. Are you physically bracing yourself for danger? Because your body is telling your brain that there is a threat. So if you notice that tension, just exhale. Drop your shoulders.
Let it go.
Let go of the need to perform. Give yourself permission to be imperfect and just focus entirely on connecting with the person in front of you.
Just exhale. By relaxing the body, you actually signal to the brain that you are safe, which opens up the pathways to the language you've worked so incredibly hard to learn. I think we can all use that advice, honestly, in more ways than one.
Thank you all so much for hanging out with us today. Remember, making mistakes isn't a failure. It's literally just the evidence that you are engaged in a real conversation. Keep practicing, keep letting go of the performance, and we will see you back here for the next episode of English Unfiltered.